And hello again, everybody. I'm Gene Valicenti with our daily NBC 10 WJAR YouTube recap of all the action, all the court action in the Karen Read retrial. Today was the view, essentially the view of the crime scene. The jury went over. NBC 10's Katie Benoit went with them. Katie, what was it like out there?
Well, the media had to stay about a football field away from the jurors, and no video is allowed to be taken while they're out there. But there is some video, the police coming in, setting up kind of a barrier, making sure no one was taking video. But it was an interesting experience. They kind of went to the back of the Lexus, walked around the house, walked around in front of the home, and kind of just got a lay of the land of the crime scene.
Okay, the address is 34 Fairview Road in Canton. Well, I don't know if that's become a kind of a spot to go see if you happen to be in that area. That house was sold since the crime, correct? Just let's go over a couple of footnotes for people who haven't been following this that closely. That house was sold?
Yes. So the Albert family owned the house at the time John O'Keefe's body was found, but they no longer own it.
Right. And what about this cement floor being repoured? Can you go over fact from fiction with that for us?
I don't think that was really brought up too much in the first trial. It might have been brought up once or twice, but they haven't gotten into that in this trial yet. They haven't really talked about the house or who was in the house yet so far in the trial. So they're still kind of just going over some of the witnesses, the first responders that morning. They're still testifying, and it's definitely a different order this time around than last time around. So you kind of never know who they're going to call this time around, the prosecution.
What about the dog that was inside the house at the time with a pet they owned? Just, again, fact from fiction.
Sure. So Chloe, the German Shepherd, she's been a topic of conversation a lot. She was rehomed. The Commonwealth says they were able to find her. The dog had a bit of a violent history with other dogs, and she was rehomed after John O'Keefe was found outside in the yard. And the Commonwealth found her recently and was able to take mold of her teeth. And that's been in question. Some of the injuries on John O'Keefe's arm, the defense alleges that they look like they could have come from dog bites, a dog attack. So they allege possibly a dog could have had something to do with this. And that's Chloe, the German Shepherd.
Okay, so the dog lived there. The dog was rehomed, as you said, that right after the incident, the house was sold. And I guess they'll get into whether or not the significance of repouring the concrete floor. All right, let's just go quickly to a soundbite. This is from the prosecutor and the defense urging the jury to pay close attention to specific things. Roll that for us.
To make a note on the Lexus about the height of the bumper. I'd ask you to make note of the height of the right rear taillight. And I'd also ask you to take note of, on the top of the hatchback, there is a part that protrudes. I'd ask you to take a look at that as well.
But your eyes are the best computer that you could bring to the view. And we'll be asking you specifically to consider the distance between that second floor front window and the front lawn.
All right, back with NBC 10's Katie Read. You want to punch that up for us, guys? I'm not seeing Katie. Katie, there you go, Katie. You're back. Not Katie Read, Katie Benoit. Katie, this notion that the car was there. Well, it was there. That taillight hasn't been fixed. They were able to go up and look at that.
So the taillight has been removed and it's in evidence. So the prosecution did let the jury know that the taillight's been removed. So it looks a little bit different than how it would have looked and how it looks in some of the crime scene photos, some of the evidence photos the jury will be shown. But they were able to go right up to the car and take a look at it. There's also a little bit of a scratch above the taillight that the prosecution wanted to point out.
Okay, so they can go look at the taillight. That's where it used to be. They took it out, but you could see a hole. You could gauge how high it is, whatever other peripheral damage was done. You could look at the house. You could see the driveway. You could see the lawn. You could see the spot where he was found. And all of this is to give to solidify what the jury is going to be hearing about, at least for the next few weeks. All right, where do we go from here? This was a half day. Well, who was the witness when we continued back in court?
So today started off with the view. So the jury went to the view and then they came back and they heard from two witnesses. They heard from a doctor who went over the results of Karen Read's blood test at the hospital. So she was taken to the hospital as well. the morning John O'Keefe was found, she was making some statements, and they were concerned about her mental health, so they took her to the hospital, and she had a blood test taken, and the doctor testified about the results of that blood test. And then we also heard from another Canton firefighter kind of talking about some of the statements Read made at the scene that morning about allegedly the two getting into a fight before this happened.
Did she say anything on the way out today, Karen Read?
She did. She talked quickly. She did not go on The View today, and just said that she didn't really want to go back to the crime scene. The last couple of days, she's been kind of walking pretty fast away. At the beginning of the trial, she would walk down the stairs and stop and talk to the media. It's changed a little bit, the landscape throughout the trial, throughout the first trial, the second trial, just kind of how the media can interact. For a time, state police were asking us to not follow her to the car. Now it kind of seems like that's let up a bit, but it kind of depends on the day. So that's how it goes.
All right. Well, they have the weekend off. Back on Monday, more testimony?
So it'll be a half day of testimony in the morning. And then in the afternoon, the ARCA witnesses will be there for a special hearing. They'll be questioned without the jury. So there's some questions about their relationship with the defense. They were hired by the feds and then they testified, but there were some questions about how close that relationship was in the first trial. So they'll be brought in and questioned without the jury for the second part of Monday.
All right, let's tell people what ARCA means. What does that mean? The ARCA will be testifying.
So they're crash reconstruction experts. They were hired by the federal government initially for the federal investigation into the case, and they were hired by the defense this time around because they just got that okay late last month to hire them to be an expert witness for them to testify for them in this time around in the second trial.
Accident reconstruction Monday, but there will be questions outside of the jury's presence. All right, NBC 10's Katie Benoit. We'll see you again up there Monday, and we hope to see you back every day. The trial continues with this recap on the NBC 10 WJAR YouTube channel. We'll also have a condensed version of this on NBC 10 News at 7, and I'll have it on the radio on WPRO. Have a good rest of your weekend.